I remember waking up in the hospital after the plane crash and not being able to move, not being able to speak. Everything hurt. There wasn't a single spot on my body that wasn't a 9 or 10 on the pain scale. And my first thought after waking up out of the haze was, this can't be real. This has to be a nightmare. Every morning after that, I woke up and I would look at my hands and look at my skin and expect there to be fingers or my skin to be smooth. But that wasn't the case, and it never would be again. And no matter how many burn ICUs I had gone through, or surgeries I'd gone through, or months in rehab, every single morning when I woke up, I was still expecting it to be over. But that's not what acceptance looks like. And it almost cost me everything. Hopefully you've never been in a plane crash, and hopefully your version looks a lot different. But maybe it was a diagnosis you weren't ready for. Maybe a relationship ended that left you wondering how you got there. Maybe you had childhood trauma that you're still trying to make sense of. A version of your life you hadn't planned that just didn't happen. So whatever it is, if you've ever woken up hoping reality had changed overnight and found out it hadn't, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Aloha and welcome to a special solo episode of the Sick Burn Podcast, where we explore the bright side of life's darkest moments. Before we dive in, if you've been moved or inspired by any part of this journey so far, please take a second to like this episode or subscribe on your favorite platform and share it with someone who might need it. It really helps us keep growing with this community. So today we're talking all about acceptance, what it actually is, why is it so hard, and what becomes possible when you finally stop fighting reality and start living in it. So first, let's start off with what acceptance actually is. And this may sound like a cop-out, but let's start off with what it's not. Acceptance isn't just giving up. It's not just saying, oh, well, this is my life. I guess I'll just keep going or I'll just suck it up. Acceptance is just saying, can I absorb what's going on, find myself in reality, and figure out how to handle things moving forward. Psychology Today puts it like this. Acceptance is the point where you can say, yes, this happened to me. It was unfair and terrible, but I have to come to terms with it. It no longer holds me active. And I know it's hard. I know that it's not easy, especially from my situation. I really didn't want to accept that I went from being someone who was super independent, super capable, very physically fit, to now needing people for everything in my life. The moment of, I can't talk, I can't get out of this bed, I can't use my hands, was one of the hardest things in my entire life that kind of became something I had to grip with. And I think we all have these moments in our life where we get stuck with something that's really hard for us to deal with, and we just don't want to believe it's reality. And that's fair. I think it's an adaptation of our mind trying to protect us and trying to make us feel secure in that hopefully something good will happen, or that one day we'll wake up and that things will just be better. But that's not the case. And I think Psychology Today puts it best, again, with another quote which says, as I let go of my grief and I surrender control over to it, I am now freed from it. And I think that's ultimately what we're trying to get from this experience, is the freedom and the accountability and the power to then take over the tough situations in your life, to better move through your life, especially through hard seasons, and not get stuck in the past, which I know all too well. And research backs this up. What is shown is that once we're able to then accept reality, we're able to then move and heal from our trauma. And again, this all starts with being able to accept what is. Now, the doctor who's done the most research on radical acceptance is a Dr. MARSHA LINEHAN. She is a dialectical behavioral therapist who basically created the concept of radical acceptance. And her quote goes like this about it: complete and total openness to the facts of reality as they are, without throwing a tantrum and growing angry. And it is such a hard thing to do. There were so many parts about this recovery process for me that I was bitter about and I was angry about. I remember thinking, having those thoughts. I think a lot of people would, or maybe you do in your own experiences of why me, or how did this happen? Or I thought I was being super careful. How did this happen to me out of anybody else out there? And I got really angry about it. I would get really mad at family, friends, at doctors. And I think compounding with not being able to do things for myself, again, feeding myself or being able to speak and tell people what I needed, the frustrations of, having a trach and having to have fluid sucked out of your throat so you could breathe normally. I think that frustration and anger about everything and a lot about what I felt I lost carried over into so many parts of my life, even after I got out of the hospital, even after I got out of the rehab facility. And so I think it's normal to have some anger about this, the trauma that's happened in your life and how it kind of gets you stuck in that moment. But again, it's trying to absorb and come to grips with what has happened without getting mad or frustrated about it is part of the process and is on the path to healing. So in a podcast I really love called Hidden Brain, this recent episode was called Radical Acceptance, and it just kind of serendipitously popped up on my feed while I was trying to think about all the different angles that I wanted to speak about in terms of acceptance and why it is important to heal. And they had this doctor on the show. Professor Dan Stevens created a program called the Stanford Design Think. And so the way it works is basically, how do we optimize our life like we would engineering any type of product? He actually was a designer at Apple during the Steve Jobs era and helped design things like the mouse. So how do we actually do that for our own everyday life? Now, he's not just talking about it in terms of optimizing our life so that we live healthier and happier lives, even though those are elements of it. He really was coming at it from his own place of grief and acceptance. One of the stories that they brought up in this episode of the podcast was that his wife, that they had been married for decades at this point, actually contracted a very rare form of cancer. And ultimately, there was not going to be any type of cure or solution that would stop her from passing away from her cancer. Now, she contracted it about 69 years old. And after a few days of deliberation between him and his wife, they decided that they were going to tell people that she was dying for cancer, but her quote was, "This is sad, but it's not tragic." And through that, he actually said that it was one of the best years of his relationship, as crazy as that sounds, even though his wife was passing away from cancer, because they got to live fully from that diagnosis. And even though she did pass away, he was able to move through it, her as well, in a happier, more fulfilled way. And ultimately, I think that speaks volumes to the power of what acceptance can do. Not only that, he talks about an experience with a member of his church and a friend, a guy named Gary, who found out that he at some point was going to have multiple strokes because he had already had a stroke. And as much as he was trying to blame God or trying to figure out why me, again, like I was doing through my own accident, what Dave ended up saying to him was this: "Gary, maybe you're just a person with really bad stroke DNA living in a broken world. How do you live well through that?" And I think with that type of diagnosis and with that seriousness of a situation, knowing that your life could end early, I think it put it into perspective for Gary that we don't get to choose when we leave, but we have to make the most of it while we're here. And this is kind of corroborated by Gary's wife, who ran into Dave at a store and said, "Hey, I don't know what you said to him, but he's completely changed. He seems more at peace." And I think that's something I absolutely relate with. It's something that I feel a lot more these days. I think overall, the meaning I get from what Dave experienced and what he teaches through the Stanford Design Thinking Lab is that peace is kind of allowed to enter your life, and you're allowed to be at peace because you're able to accept the situations that you can't control and the circumstances of your life. Philosophy also has talked a lot about this throughout history. And as many of you probably know, I'm a big fan of Stoicism. I'm a big fan of Ryan Holiday and meditations. And this goes back, thousands of years to Marcus Aurelius with Meditations, where he said, if you accept the things to which fate binds you and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all of your heart. And I think even back then, they knew that you can't control every circumstance in your life. So much of what we're trying to do is stop the bad thing from happening, right? We're trying to stop, a tax situation, or trying to stop a physical, an accident from happening, or even, a medical diagnosis. But ultimately, you could do everything right, and those things can still happen to you. They can still hit you. And it's the hardest thing in the world to just say, yeah, I'm going to accept what is and move through it. But the more you try to fight what is, the harder and more painful you're making it on yourself. And I see it so much in people in everyday life, and they basically are making a tough situation even harder. For those of you who don't know, Marcus Aurelius at this point was the ruler of all of Rome, and ultimately, by standards of history, he was one of the most rich and most powerful people to ever walk the planet. And yet he still had to grip with the fact of, can I accept this world that I'm living in, and can I accept the constraints on me? And so we think of these rich and powerful people as, well, they can do anything they want and they have everything at their disposal. And while that is true to some extent, there are other situations that are forced upon them that we wouldn't want, I don't think, in our lives either. And so he constantly was questioning, am I accepting what is, or am I trying to fight hard against what is happening in my life, and ultimately making him more displeased and more frustrated, and making his suffering greater in his day-to-day life. I think I'm reminded as I read Marcus Aurelius's quotes that we're all going to suffer some kind of way, right? Whether it's an unexpected suffering like a plane crash, or an unexpected medical diagnosis, or the loss of a loved one. And then there is what my therapist would call meaningful suffering, which is suffering you put towards a goal, towards being somebody you want to be. And I think ultimately, as we try to eliminate the unmeaningful suffering by not focusing on the things not in our control and focusing on the things that are in our control, we're able to live a better, more fulfilling, more meaningful life. And it truly does try to make the tough times a lot easier for you to go through, live through, and then work through. For me, there wasn't one specific moment that was like, I accept everything that happened in this crazy situation. For me, it felt like a series of events. And I've talked about this in previous episodes and definitely on social media, but I think the moment that I most associate my acceptance of this whole situation and the accident was that my therapist asked me, we've talked a lot about what you've lost, right? We've talked about loss of limbs. We've talked about a loss of your job, a loss of identity, a loss of income. But what have you gained? And again, for the longest time, this was such a hard thing for me to even entertain. I could not accept that. I was like, I only can see loss. And when I started to even entertain, when I started to try to imagine the opposite world of, okay, what did I gain if I gained anything? I think that's where the idea of acceptance started to enter my life. And I remember going on so many walks with my dog around the neighborhood, and I would listen to podcasts or just listen to music and think about this is my life. This is what happened, this crazy circumstance that I tried everything possible to make safe, to do right, to do what I was taught, and that it didn't go the way that I expected. Once I was able to say, all right, well, because those things happened, you're here now, you're here in this moment. What do you do with it? How do you make this moment good? And how do you live the best life you can from this moment? One more thing that's worth saying, though, is that healing isn't always a linear path. There's not, hey, you accept this and then one day it's good forever. No, I mean, as I've experienced through the trauma, depression, and I guess the PTSD diagnosis is that there's some days I'm feeling on top of the world and I'm able to move through the suffering, the understanding of loss. And sometimes I feel that loss greater than I did, a couple years ago, or definitely now. It kind of just pops up. And so I think it's fair to say that healing is going to look different to everybody. It's not always going to be smooth sailing. You're not always, at 100%. That's why I love this saying that I really resonate with, which is 1% better. And in that saying, it's not always just 1% stacked on 1% stacked on 1%. People even say, why not 2%? Why not 3%? Because I think sometimes the best we can give is 1%. I think the best we can give is showing up and trying to do a little bit more. It definitely was a process that helped me get to where I was. It was a process that helped me get through nights in the hospital when I couldn't sleep. It was a process that helped me start standing because of the pain in my back from fractures and all the burns. So it just simply became compounding and trying to not focus necessarily on all the terrible things that happened and all the loss, but also, again, trying to accept that this happened. What can I still do? How do I take ownership of this and then move forward with what I still have access to? Another thing is that acceptance isn't just a destination. It's not one day you accept what is and then everything's peaches after that and it's all sunshine and rainbows. It's a practice. It's something that you continuously do and you're able to get better at it. For example, when I woke up in the morning, it stopped becoming such a culture shock that my fingers weren't there or that my skin had all these scars on it. It became something of, all right, you know that you look different. You know that your capabilities are different now. But yes, this is reality. You still have the ability to make it a good life. And that's how I started to work some of this acceptance into my own life and really just make it more meaningful and get myself focused on moving forward and trying to figure out what is meaning and how do I make this a good life. One thing from a previous episode that this reminded me of was my conversation with G. Michael Hoff. In that episode, he talked about laying on the ground with his back broken and that he wanted so bad as a Marine, as a man, to just kind of power through and just be like, get up, will himself to get out. But it wasn't possible. And so he was praying to God to basically allow him, if this is what you want, God, just let me to understand the lesson, let me to absorb it, and let me just kind of sit with this and understand what you're trying to teach me and help me move through this. And I think that's so powerful that there is a level of acceptance when you go through something so terrible. For me, again, with the trauma of the accident, where you stop trying to fight the reality of what it is, when you do just accept this is what happened, that you do find some peace from it. And all of a sudden, this weight on your shoulders, it just kind of flies off of you and you feel lighter, you feel happier, you feel like you're more able to just kind of move through life. And whether it's your back being broken, or I guess for both of us, we had some back issues, but for me, it was burns and scars and all that stuff. That lightness gives you the access and the energy to take on other things in your life so much better. It's funny now being 3, 4, or 5 years later and seeing where I'm at, seeing that I'm a lot more physically capable. I can travel by myself. I have a loving partner that I can also help take care of, in little ways around the house. I can drive now. I can get myself to places I want to go. And then now I have a son. I have somebody who needs me more than I needed anybody as I was going through the later parts of my recovery, where I felt so incapable and there was such an inability for me to manage anything in my life. One of the things I don't think I've talked about a lot was in the rehab facility, you have physical therapists, but I worked a lot with occupational therapists. And before I had my prosthetic, I had to figure out, how do I use my hand without my fingers? And it was so hard. It was such a weird experience because also my hand being skin grafted, the feeling, the sensations in my hands just felt weird. And for so many years, I could feel those phantom limbs. I could feel the pointer fingers that weren't there. I could feel the ends of these fingertips that weren't there. And I didn't have a prosthetic. So I really just had to use what I had. And I would get so mad and so frustrated trying to just tie my shoelace or get on my clothes or try to learn how to brush my teeth because I had more fingers on my left hand, or trying to open things with my left hand. That frustration, I think, ultimately was part of the healing process, but also was me trying to fight the fact that I had limbs and now I didn't. And so the non-acceptance of that ultimately just caused me to be angrier and be in more pain and to be more frustrated. And yeah, I not only took that out of myself, but I took that out on a lot of other people unfairly. And so it really kind of reverberated out of me. And it really, I think at a lot of times was hurting the relationships of people around me who ultimately were just trying to help me. Yeah, it's something I'm not proud of. I give myself grace in understanding that, yeah, you are going through something not many people in the world will ever experience, not just because of a plane crash, but also as a burn survivor and as somebody who has finger amputations. Ultimately, this process of accepting has now allowed me to help other people, like my son, for example, or other people early on in their journey, but also help my relationships with people in my life in the day-to-day, and understand that there's probably things that they're going through that I don't understand. And hopefully they can accept what they're going through too, to better enrich their own life and their own relationships with others. Another philosopher who I truly love his take on acceptance and what he would do to embody his philosophy is Epictetus, who was born into slavery and basically created his entire mentality and life around the philosophy of accepting what is, focusing on what you control, and trying to eliminate what you can't control. Epictetus said, "We are not disturbed by what happens to us, but by our thoughts about what happened to us." And as crazy as that sounds, I do believe that's true. When I first was in the hospital and I was laying there in the ICU, all I could think about was how this crash had ruined my life. And that thought was perpetual. It just kept going. And my mind kept finding evidence about why this ruined my life and why my life would never get back to being good again, or why, it was worth giving up. Like I should just give up on life, or why I should have died in that accident. And again, it was that shift years later after years of therapy of like, yeah, but do you have access to new things now? Do you have better relationships with people? Do you have a better perspective on life? And for me, I know without a doubt, I do now. I know that when I'm getting overwhelmed, when I'm getting really stressed, that this too shall pass. And I know it's easy to say and almost sometimes impossible to put into practice, but I know like if I can do it, which I still, again, it's a practice. Some days I'm better at it than I'm not. Then a lot of you can do it too. I know that it's possible that we realize that I may not be able to solve this problem right at this moment, but if I work at it a week, a month, a year from now, it'll be done. I think that, yeah, it does give me a lot of peace, and I think it hopefully can give you a lot of peace too. So much of what we want to do is just trying to eliminate the discomfort immediately. But I think that truly just knowing that you're alive and that you have another chance to live a good life, to be with people you care about, that option is always there for you. And again, it doesn't need to be this big overarching thing. We sometimes think we need to go on this week-long vacation to enjoy our life for, again, 1 week at a time, or we only get to enjoy our life on the weekends. But I think there's small moments every day that we can kind of just take in and try to appreciate what is. And it's something that I do try to incorporate a lot in my life. And I find myself really just resetting. There was a day recently where I was just in the backyard and, I was outside with my dog throwing her the ball and she wasn't bringing the ball back the way I wanted to. And I caught myself being like, we've done this a million times. Why are you not dropping the ball, by my feet and you stand there and wait for me to throw it? And I stopped myself and I said, hey man, you're outside right now. The weather's perfect. And you just have to throw the ball with your dog for 5 minutes. And it was a great resetter. And I don't think enough of us do that. I don't think enough of us take the time to just be and appreciate what is. Maybe you're in the car and you're listening to your favorite song or your favorite podcast. Or, maybe you're at work and you get to talk to your favorite client. And yeah, it's work, but you're at least talking to somebody you enjoy talking to. Or, yeah, at the end of the day, you have your favorite meal at home waiting for you. And you're going to just be able to enjoy it, whatever, 5 minutes. Enjoy each bite. Break it down. It doesn't need to be this huge overarching thing that you put off in the future. Find ways to enjoy the moment and what your life is providing for you right now. Now, I know a lot of you aren't burn survivors, but you've had your own adversity in your life. And maybe there's some things that you're not dodging. You're not accepting what happened. You're not trying to acknowledge it. And because of that, you're stuck in that past. But again, acceptance doesn't mean you're giving up on change. It means that you're not fighting yourself at the starting line. And so once you acknowledge the circumstances, the parts that have been holding you back, the trauma that you never gotten over, once you're able to really start accepting that truth, you can then start breaking it down, distilling it, and not letting it hold you back from the person you want to be and creating the meaning in your life that you want to create. Dan also says something pretty amazing, which is standing outside and banging on the door of reality and complaining doesn't change a thing, but getting inside reality and acting effectively can. And I think that's so beautifully said. It's inside your own experience. It's inside your day-to-day life. It's inside the situations and the mindset that's holding you back from getting to do the things you want to do, from being the person you want to be, is where you can effectively start changing. But it has to start at acceptance, and you can't deny it. You can't run from it. You can't stop being your own biggest obstacle to move forward in this place and move forward in the life you want to live. So now when I think about that person that's laying in the hospital bed, looking at all the bandages, not being able to speak, confused about my life and where life would go, or if the life I have is even worth living, and seeing where I'm at now, it's undoubtedly thanks to the practice of acceptance that's gotten me to this point. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fun. It's not something that you're going to love doing at the start, but it is necessary in order to heal from the things that have been holding you back your whole life and have stopped you from having the relationships you want to have, from being the person you want to be, and to show up every day as somebody who has meaning in their life and just feels fulfilled in the person they are. I think acceptance is this beautiful gift that you truly give to yourself. It is looking in the mirror in your soul and saying, hey, this thing really messed me up. It was really hard, but I'm tired of letting it hold me back in life. How do I break this down? How do I find space to hold this that's not going to stop me from being the person I want to be and showing up the way you want to show up for others in your life? What became possible when I stopped letting the accident hold me back was that I started to really dive into what I cared about in my life, what I loved, being able to reconnect with people that I really loved, to be more honest with them, to be more open with them, and to live a more authentic life. And that freedom was something I could have never experienced before my accident. I was way too guarded. I was way too ashamed to show the real side of me. I was way too nervous to put myself out there or to go do things I've always wanted to do because I was afraid that it would make me look dumb, or it would make me look weak, or it would make me look silly. And I was able to shake a lot of that in this process to, no, this is who I am. I get to take these chances and I have the opportunity to do it. So let's go do it. Let's go see what this is about. And this whole podcast, this whole life and friends and community I've built or we've built all together would not have been possible with accepting, all right, this is what happened. How do I make the best of it? How do I move with this? And that option is fully there for you too. So what is the thing in your life where you're on the outside, you're banging on the door, yelling, but you need to be inside and fixing? So I'm inviting you to sit with this. I'm inviting you to look on the inside. Maybe you know exactly what that moment is, that trauma that's been holding you back your whole life. But you know that you need to deal with it. You know that if you could get through that or get over it, you're going to make your life so much better. I'm inviting you to sit with that and just say, hey, if I accept this for what it is, for what happened, how do I then carry this and use it to better my life? I mean, I truly believe if I can do it, anybody can do it. You know, there was days where there was more days than not where I felt like I couldn't leave the house because I felt like I looked, like a freak, or because of how bad my scars were, or the metal hand, or, the reconstructed ear. I'm like, how could I ever go back in public? But once I accepted, like, hey, this is your reality, this is who you are, and you have to show people somebody beyond just a plane crash survivor, just a burn survivor, just a partial hand amputee. Like, you're still Thomas. You're still somebody of value. You're still somebody who's worthy of love. And you're still here to be useful to others, to hopefully help them in some way. That acceptance completely changed my perspective, and it's part of the reason why I keep going. It's part of the reason why I have my family now, and it's part of the reason why I feel meaning and purpose. And I know this is possible for you. I know this is an option that you can look in the mirror, start working on, and make a better tomorrow for yourself. So we'll end with this. I hope that you're able to entertain the idea of accepting that trauma, that relationship that ended, that physical ailment that hit you or that hit a loved one. Just entertain the fact that, all right, what if this was supposed to happen? What if this makes me better in some way? What if this is a sign that I'm on the right path? Hopefully this landed with you in some way today. If you think this could benefit someone else, please share this episode. If you'd enjoy it, please like it, please subscribe, and we're going to continue more incredible conversations with future guests across the board who've overcome some of life's greatest challenges and adversity, and we'll be doing more series of this, focusing on one topic at a time, such as finding values and meaning. So thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Sick Burn Podcast, especially if you made it this far. Please take care of yourself, if you can, someone else, and keep exploring the bright side, the life's darkest moments. All right, aloha.